Welcome to the Secunia Factsheet. Secunia Factsheets is a new initiative from Secunia in order to help us provide better information to the security community and to the users of software. My name is Stefan, Research Analyst Director, and I will guide you through this webinar. We started with the Secunia Factsheets last year. This is the first webinar, so we will first spend some time to explain the metrics that we use, and then we'll have a short look at what we detected based on our factsheets that we released today, what happened in the last 12 months with this actual date. So, what is the motivation? In the security industry, compared to other industries, we still lack coherent, standardized and scheduled reporting of important security parameters. For example, if you compare it to other more mature industries like the finance industry, their key performance parameters are reported yearly or quarterly and in a consistent manner. This provides interested parties and the public with relevant information for decision making and for risk assessment. If you want to know what's going on today, you have several websites, including ours, where you can dig some data, but this data is only the result of your query. Or you have some reports about specific events like yearly reports, half-yearly reports, but then you just get the information that the provider of the report deems important at a specific time. This makes it very hard to compare evolutions or trends or to see how it relates to previous periods, because all those reports are usually or normally in a different format. We wanted to address this and we started our Security Factsheets initiative. So the current lack of availability of relevant security information shall be solved, and we want to provide this information in a standardized and in a scheduled format. Standardized means that we have a set of metrics that will be always the same in the fact sheets, and scheduled means that we release those fact sheets for a specific set of products every quarter. Our fact sheets are publicly available for free from our website, and they are released at the end of the quarter. Feel free to go to secunia.com/factsheets. So what is the content in our fact sheets? Basically, in a single PDF document on 2 pages, the fact sheet presents important security information for a given product in a consistent and standardized format. The fact sheets go well beyond simple vulnerability counts. These you can derive or pull directly from our website, but we also analyze the kinds and the number of vulnerabilities paired with information about the software vendor's ability to roll out security patches. Basically, we data mine our database, our vulnerability intelligence, and correlate the information and provide information that you can impossibly get out just of public databases due to the complexity of correlating information. So one of the main points in our Secunia fact sheets is a year-on-year analysis. So all the key parameters that we measure, that we correlate, we do that on a year-on-year basis. For example, the 2011 first quarter fact sheets, we compare the preceding 12 months versus the last 12 months periods. At the bottom of the fact sheets you see a short timeline at the bottom right, where color coding explains how this works and what periods are covered. So the preceding 12 months, in our example for the Q1 fact sheets of this year, cover the Q2 to Q1 from 2009 to 2010. In all the plots, this period is colored in gray. The last period, so this is the most recent 12 months period, in our example here covers 2010 Q2 up to and including 2011 Q1. This period is always colored in red when you see it in the plots. So we do a year-on-year analysis and we compare the trends. So for example, how did the number of Secunia advisories we published in the preceding period compare to the last period. This is also the trend indicator that we put up. So what do we measure? basically we have three areas or three blocks that we look at. The first is the number of Secunia advisories and vulnerabilities. I will later explain what the difference is. So we have a plot of the number of Secunia advisories year on year over the last 12 months, and we see the evolution for every month. So we can see when something changed during the year, or whether or not there are specific periodic patterns during the year. We do the same for the number of vulnerabilities or CVEs. CV stands for Common Vulnerability Enumeration. I will talk later a little bit about this. The next block is we talk about the types of vulnerabilities. So every vulnerability has a specific type and has specific properties. So we break down the vulnerabilities by attack vector. We break down the vulnerabilities by the criticality of the vulnerabilities, and we classify the vulnerabilities based on the impact it has if somebody can successfully exploit the vulnerability. What is the impact on the system? And the third block is about the solution status. So at the day the vulnerability is first disclosed when we release a Secunia advisories, what is the solution status? Is the vulnerability patched? That means the vendor had a patch available. Is the vulnerability unpatched, so we are still waiting for a patch, or is there a partial fix from the vendor available? And then for all the vulnerabilities that at the day of disclosure have not a patch available, what is the time till a patch is available? What is the distribution? How long do we have to wait for a patch? So this is the general information that we provide in our Secunia security fact sheets. So the first metric is Secunia advisories year on year. On this plot you see for the last 12 months, this is from end of March this year to 1st of April from the previous year. For every month, what is the number of cumulative advisors we released? So what we see here in this example in red, this is the last 12 months, how it evolved, and in gray, this is the previous 12 months. What we can see here is the year-on-year trend marked in the legend on top of the graph is 0%. So we had the same number of advisories, 9 in this case, in the last 12 months as in the previous 12 months. What you further see is when did we publish those Secunia advisories. You see it in this step function. In this case we see, okay, there's a little bit of activity in August, then it's quiet in September, it's also quiet between June, July till early August, and so on. Depending on the product, you might spot specific patterns like a holiday season or quarters with more activity, that more vulnerabilities are found in the products. What does a Secunia advisory say? Basically, whenever there is a security event that requires an administrative action or a risk assessment or some action like a patch is released that you need to reinstall a patch, we release a Secunia advisory. So the number of Secunia advisories released in a specific period of time for a specific product is a first order approximation for the number of security events or for the number of patches that need to be installed. The same methodology for the number of vulnerabilities. We count the number of vulnerabilities as the number of unique vulnerabilities measured as unique CVEs, common vulnerability and enumerations. So CVE is an established methodology to provide unique identifiers for unique vulnerabilities. It is an industry-wide standard, so this allows to compare numbers from different providers. So CVE is a viable metric to count the distinct number of vulnerabilities in a specific period. When we look for the same product as in the previous plot at the number of vulnerabilities, we see that we had a change. So the preceding period had more vulnerabilities than the last period. So this is a trend or a decrease of minus 17% from 41 to 34. Again, on this plot we are able to see periodicity if there are specific periods with more or less period vulnerabilities and how it relates. So we continue with the year-on-year analysis. In the next plot we look at the types of vulnerabilities. As said before, we have three key classes of types that we look at. One is the attack vector, one is the criticality of the advisories, and one is the impact of advisories. So the attack vector describes if and how an attacker can exploit the vulnerability, so whether from the internet, so this is from an untrusted network, whether he needs to be in a local network, or if he needs unauthenticated, unprivileged access to the system in order to exploit the vulnerability. In this case, from an internet browser, we see all the attack vectors are from remote, so that means that if this software, this web browser has access to the remote internet, the attacker can exploit the vulnerability. The second plot is the criticality of advisories. We classify the criticality on a 5 range scale from not critical to less critical, moderately, highly, and extremely critical. If vulnerability is rated extremely critical, so this means that usually exploit code is already available and it's extremely easy to exploit the vulnerability. So the criticality is based on an assessment of the impact on a system, the attack vector, also what mitigating factors are available, and if it is already actively exploited prior to the release of a patch. Again, with gray and red, we see the evolution of those properties from the preceding period to the current, to the last 12 months period. What we see here is that the criticality of high and extremely critical vulnerabilities was the same over the last periods. However, in the preceding period we had some moderately critical and some not critical vulnerabilities, whereas in the current period we don't have that. The last metric here is the impact, again in the number of Secunia advisories in the respective period. The classification of the impact tells us how a successful exploitation of the system will affect the system. So in this plot we plot the 5 most prevalent impact classes out of 12 impact classes that we track. What we see here is that system access is the most prevalent impact class for both periods. Exposure of sensitive information has become more dominant in the last 12 months compared to the preceding 12 months. So these types of vulnerabilities plots gives you an information about the types, criticality, impact, and the attack vector of the vulnerabilities and how it relates year on year on the time. The next plot is very simple, the history of Secunia advisories and vulnerabilities. What we plot here is a longer term view. So we go back 5 years and we accumulate all the vulnerabilities per year. So how many advisories per calendar year or how many vulnerabilities per calendar year we had in this product. We see here this product started to be affected by vulnerabilities around the 2008. There was almost nothing before. Further, if we are in the mid of the year, so if we report our fact sheets for Q2 and Q3, we also do an extrapolation of the current year based on the data we already have. So Q1 is 1/4 of the year, so we do not do an extrapolation on just so few data. We do extrapolation for Q2 and Q3, and in Q4 we have the year finished, so we can report the true number and there's no need for an extrapolation. So the next set of metrics is the solution status. So we look at the solution status of a Secunia advisory of the vulnerability at the day of the disclosure. So we have 3 status. We have either a vendor patch is available at the day of disclosure, the vendor has released a partial fix. A partial fix can remediate the vulnerability, but perhaps not on all versions of the program that are affected by the vulnerability. And unpatched means there's no solution whatsoever from the vendor. Again, red and gray comparing the preceding 12 months to the last 12 months. If you add all the numbers, say for the last 12 months, we see we have 4 advisories with a vendor patch available. We have 5 advisories with which are unpatched at the day of disclosure. So in total we had 9 advisories in this year, of which 4 had a vendor patch, 5 were not patched. This is the way how to read this plot. This gives us an information on what we can expect at the day of disclosure and how it evolved. On the next plot, we look at how fast a vendor is able to release a patch for all the vulnerabilities or for all the Secunia advisories that had no patch available at the disclosure. So if a patch is available at the disclosure, we see it in the previous plot. For all the advisories that the patch is made available within the 24 months upon the disclosure, we look at the distribution of the time and by the risk. What we see here is that 6 advisories were patched within 6 advisories were patched in total after the publication of the Secunia advisory. And we also see color coded or with these levels of gray about the criticality of these. So those were 4 extreme and 3 highly critical advisories. And of these advisors, we see that 3 of these 6 advisors were patched between 31 and 60 days of the disclosure. So 6 were patched within 30 days of the disclosure. So this plot shows us what is the delay between vulnerability disclosure till patch availability for the Secunia advisories that were not patched at the day of disclosure. So now let's have a look at the data or the highlights that we found when we looked at the current batch of Secunia Factsheets that we released today. When we look at the Windows operating systems, we see that the oldness or the date when the operating system, the version of the operating system was released, that it correlates with the number of vulnerabilities. So the younger the operating system, the less vulnerabilities it has. So we found that Windows XP had in the last 12 months more vulnerabilities than Windows Vista, which had more vulnerabilities than Windows 7. This could be interpreted like the efforts into securing the product seems to pay off. Further, when we look at the types of vulnerabilities, we see that in all 3 versions of the operating system, system access, denial of service, and privilege escalation are the 3 most prevalent impact causes. If you look at privilege escalation, we readily see that our defense mechanism that we let users only work with limited privileges for security reasons can be bypassed. So, for example, you lock down the system of your users, but nevertheless, by exploiting the vulnerability of the type of privilege escalation, this would allow the attacker to escape and perhaps install unwanted software. When we look at the web browsers, we find a wide range of trends in the year-on-year analysis with respect to the vulnerability numbers among the 5 browsers. So the 5 browsers we track now is Internet Explorer, Firefox, Google Chrome, Apple Safari and Opera. So between those browsers, the trend year-on-year ranges from -37% to +167%. We were surprised to see such a difference. We further see that when we look at the browsers, the total number of vulnerabilities in a web browser, it did not correlate with the market share of the browser. This could be an artifact just of the last 12 months, or it could be a more solid finding. We will look into it later. So again, as with the operating system, system access is the most prevalent impact class, which means that we really have to take vulnerabilities in web browsers serious, as they pose a high risk to the users of the endpoints. At last, let's have a short look at Adobe Reader and Adobe Flash. Adobe Reader and Flash are the two most prevalent programs that we find on endpoints. We have our Secunia Personal Software Inspector. When we scan more than 3 billion systems, we regularly find that Adobe Reader and Adobe Flash have more than 80 and more than 95% market share. So any vulnerability in one of those products has a wide impact and has a great potential to compromise many users. So those two products had lots of security press recently. They became more and more focused, the cyber criminals and researchers, on finding vulnerabilities in those products, and we see this trend is still not over. We had plus 150 and plus 220% trend from the previous preceding 12 months to the recent 12 months. Further, Secunia advisories covering those two products were almost exclusively rated as either extremely or highly critical. It seems that this is the dominating type of vulnerabilities that currently are found in those products. This again shows that the importance of quickly patching third-party programs on endpoints is a must in order to remediate the risks. So, to close this webinar on the Secunia Factsheets, the motivation at the moment, we publish factsheets for more than a dozen major products, for Windows desktop operating systems, for major web browsers, Adobe Reader, Flash, and Oracle Sun Java. We will continue to increase the number of products we cover in the time based on customer and community feedback. So if you are missing something, if you think something is very interesting, please let us know, send us a mail or drop a note, and we will consider it and extend the range of fact sheets and products we cover based on the community feedback. So thank you very much for your attention. Stay tuned. We will continue to release fact sheets and increase our range, and I'm happy to receive questions now. Okay, there was one question: how did we select the products we have right now? Basically, we looked at the endpoints. What is the most relevant software on endpoints? We have for sure we have the operating systems. Windows operating systems are still dominant operating systems in the market. And then we have web browsers, which are the major threat. And after this, we have some third-party products. The most prevalent third-party products are the Adobe products, Adobe Reader and Adobe Flash, together with Java. Okay, no further questions. Thank you very much for your attention, and have a nice weekend.